record on this computer. All right. So the questions that so now we're looking at the practice exam. And Michelle is asking, can we have some short overview of the exam format? So let's start with that. And then Caitlin has a question as well. And then I want to go over the essay question. And if you guys will have any other thing you want to go over, please put it in the chat or just speak out. Okay. This is your time. Okay. All right. So the format for the exam, it's 13 pages long. It's going to be problems. It is not going to be a lot of multiple choice. There will be some matching similar to what you had on the practice exam where you say, is this, if I gave you an account, if I said accounts receivable, and on the balance sheet, where would accounts receivable go? How would you categorize it? What would you say what would you answer me for that? In the classified balance sheet, where does accounts receivable go?
Assets.
It is an asset. Can you be more specific?
Current assets.
Current assets. Okay, perfect. Accounts payable, how would you categorize that?
Current liabilities.
Perfect, yeah. If I said to you, stockholders' equity, where would you put that? Or common stock, I guess I answered my own question. If I said to you, sales revenue, what would you tell me? Is that on the balance sheet?
It's going to be on the income statement.
Right. So it's just knowing your accounts, knowing which one is debit or credit, all of that. So hang on, I'm going to shut my door. God, I had people in my house. Okay. All right. So you're going to have journal entries, you're going to have statements, you're going to have, what else? Account identification. You're going to have find the missing number like we had in the practice exam. You should know the statements, and then I think that's about it. I think we're really focusing on just kind of the basics of chapters 1, 2, and 3. I'm not doing any theory questions that you would have gotten on your homework. It's more just the problems. Okay. All right.
So like we kind of I'm sorry.
You're good, go ahead.
Okay, so we just gonna focus on solving the problems like what we did on the practice exam, then just focus on the assumptions of financial reporting, like going concern or economic, like we're just gonna focus more like a solving scenario, right? Like that, right?
Right. And just for this first exam, yeah. So I think on the quizzes, there's more theory, and some of the homework, there's more theory. So that's where I'm testing the theory there. But you should know them because they impact how the problems work, but in general, they're not on the test. So
is the exam going to be the same format as the practice, like the practice exam? Is it going to be like set up in the same way?
it's similar, Kaylee. I think what I try to, I can't promise people identical problems with just different numbers. So if you study the practice exam and you pretty much know how to do those problems, for sure, you're probably going to pass the exam. You may not get an A, but for sure you'll pass the exam. So sometimes when I change the order of a problem or change the presentation of a problem, if you've just memorized the practice exam, sometimes those problems, you won't be able to solve them because it's an algebra, something's been moved around. But you should do fine on most of the exam up to, I would say you'll get probably a 70-75% if you memorize the practice exam. So it's just how much of the material do you really know if we change an order, So it won't be identical with different numbers. It'll be similar, but it won't be identical.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. All right. I know and first
Okay.
exams are always rough. Yeah, Hunter.
Is there like any concepts that aren't like mentioned in the practice exam that will be on the midterm?
So what I did was I kind of put this in the front, know your brief exercises. So yeah, it's possible that there's an exercise that's on the practice exam that was in that, I'm sorry, there's an exercise in the exam that was in your homework, but it's not on the practice exam. So just be sure you've studied your homework. You can go in, you can do the practice homework until tonight. And then and even if you don't have time to do the homework, just read through it again and say, oh yeah, I know how to do that. Oh, okay, I know how to do that, so you're familiar with it. And so look at the end of chapter, problem questions. And if you have reading notes, that sort of thing. And always kind of glance through my PowerPoint. And again, you don't have to study 200 hours for every exam, but if you just kind of go through the PowerPoint and say, yeah, I know how to do that problem, then you'll be fine, I think. But it's very possible that the example, that's why I say study your homework first and then do the practice exam, because the practice exam is just a sample. So it may not hit every single problem. Okay. So you guys, lots of you did this problem. So I'm glad to, hopefully you know how to do that now. And then you can see all the journal entries, and then Casey. And with the journal entries, by the way, I noticed with Monopoly, make sure you put that debit all the way to the left here and then just indent the credit, okay? And here's your statements and review number 8, exercise 7. So 5, 6. Now I don't remember if there's a number 8. You sure there's a number 8? Oh, this one. Okay, gotcha. This one, is this the one you wanted, Casey? Casey, are you still there?
I'm here. It's for that exercise 7, it's the 8th question.
Got it. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
You bet. Okay. So solve the problems below. At the beginning of the year, Vasquez had total assets. Oh no, that's for a different problem. Sorry. During 2017, Steele's total assets increased 25, total liabilities decreased 15. What must have been the company's net income? Okay, let's do this one in, let's see if I can bring it up. Open. Got too much going on. Nope, I don't have it handy. Let me bring it up. I've got a sample one of these. Well, we'll just do it on here. Okay. So this is the way I do these problems. Okay. All right. Because I think I want to make sure I'm in alignment. Okay. So typically in these problems, I would say if you know the beginning of the year balances for assets, liabilities, and stockholders' equity, well, great. But typically in this problem, you don't know it. Okay. So we say, if I can get it bigger. Can you guys see both my Excel spreadsheet and this? Can you see my Excel spreadsheet?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, thank you, Hunter. I need constant reinforcement because I don't trust Zoom. All right, so I set this up as the accounting equation, okay? And I say, assets equals liabilities plus stockholders' equity. And I don't, so I'm going to abbreviate beginning of the year. I don't know what the beginning of the year is. So apparently I don't need it for the problem. So then I say during 2017. So let's just say during the year. Okay, during the year, all we know is, now remember, for every transaction, it has to zero out. So we're saying total assets increased 25,000. So we'll put that in there. Okay, total assets increased 25,000, but total liabilities decreased 15,000. But this equals has to hold for every transaction. So then you have to solve for this number, okay? So whatever stockholders' equity is, it plus minus 15,000 has to equal a positive 25,000, okay? It just has to, okay? So we know that stockholders' equity during the year has to be the equivalent of 25,000 minus 15,000. Okay, Casey, go ahead.
For the beginning of the year, do we use the numbers that they have above number 7?
No, because you can see the company name changed.
Oh,
So this
okay.
was Vasquez.
Got it.
And this is Steele. So this
I
only
see.
applied to this problem. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. And so we're saying 15 minus 15 plus what equals positive 25,000. Okay. So that's going to be equal to 40,000 because 40 minus 15 equals 25,000. Okay. But we had to solve for that. Okay. And so that's the first piece of the problem. And so then they're saying during the year, so the total change in stockholders' equity was 40,000. What goes into stockholders' equity? That can be common stock. That can be retained earnings. And what goes into retained earnings is going to be plus net income. Or it's going to be minus dividends. Okay, so we have to be mindful that it could be any of these things. So here we go. So we're saying during the same year, company investors invested an additional 30,000 and the company paid dividends of 15. What must have been net income for the year? So you know the ending balance here for during the year, the total of the transactions during the year was 40,000, okay? And now we know of that 40,000, we had additional common stock, okay, of 30,000. We had dividends paid out of 15,000. And the only other thing that could influence the ending balance adding up to 40,000 is net income. And we don't know what that is. That's our unknown. But we know that all of these things adds up to 40,000. Okay. So you just back into that. You say 30 minus 15 is 15. And it must be, net income must be 25,000. Okay. So it's a lot of manipulation of the numbers, and it's really pushing you guys to understand assets equals liabilities plus stockholders' equity, and then all the components that go into stockholders' equity. Okay. Does that make a little more sense? Any other questions on that one? So we had, so going back up here, if total assets increased 150 and total liabilities decreased 80, what is the ending balance? So when you guys do these problems, you really need to read them really carefully. I would bring a highlighter to the class, and it's, are they asking you for the ending balance? Are they asking you for the activity? Just know the difference between those, okay? All right, we have another comment in the chat. Thank you. All right. Okay. All right, so let's go. So let's take a quick look at the statements. I just want to make sure. When you guys do the statements, so if you get a list of transactions, make sure when you prepare your statements, I want you to be really careful, and this came up with Monopoly too, to make sure you put all your titles on correctly. So here's the solutions for the statements, and let me just point out a few things here. So be sure to put your titles, and the one thing I did leave off the titles is for income statement, it's for the period ending. So you always want to get that in there. For the retained earnings, it is also for the period ending. So be sure to put that in. So for income statement and retained earnings statement, the date should say for the period ending. But for the balance sheet, it doesn't say that. It says as of. Okay, so just know the difference. So income statement is for a period of time. Retained earnings statement is for a period of time. But the balance sheet is at a point in time, as of this point in time. So income statement, if you have more than one revenue account, put a total revenue, list both revenue accounts, and then put total. And you can see here we list each expense account, and then we put the total, and then calculate net income. For the retained earnings statement, be careful. We've had a lot of retained earnings statements that have had a zero beginning balance. And in most companies, that's not true, because you would have to be in your very first month of business to have a zero beginning balance. You all had a beginning balance of zero with Monopoly, but typically most companies are ongoing, so they have a different beginning balance every month. And if you go look up here in the list of accounts, let's see, let's go back over to here. We said retained earnings 5,000 as of January 1st. So whatever this is, they began operations January 1st, but this data is as of December 31st. So there's a difference there. So everything's updated through year end except for retained earnings, because we really don't touch retained earnings except at the end of the year. So just be mindful of that. Okay, and so let's go down and look at the balance sheet. Do not forget, if you have current you will have current assets, so you want that total there. If you have equipment, you also be mindful if you have accumulated depreciation, which you've had in some of your homework problems, that would go here as a negative, and then you'd put total PPE, property, plant, and equipment. Okay. So even though accumulated depreciation has a credit balance, it's going to be with the property, plant, and equipment. And then your current, here, we didn't have a separation between current liabilities and long-term, but if you have current and long-term, you need those subtotals. Okay. These are only current liabilities. All right. And then this part's the same. Okay. All right. So let's talk about the essay. Okay. Everybody good? Anybody have any more questions? Oh, Casey, do you still have your question? I'm sorry.
Yeah. Can we write PPE on there, or would you rather see it all written out?
I am just fine with PPE. So
Okay.
I will say that with COVID, PPE has come to mean something different. So that's a little confusing, but yeah, I'm okay with abbreviations as long as I can read them. I'm okay with abbreviations in your journal entries as long as I know them. You know, it's like, don't do something really weird, but you know, if you want to abbreviate, instead of writing account receivable, if you want to write ACCT REC, you know, as 2 words, that's fine. So okay to abbreviate. Okay. Oh, thank you, Tara. Tara has a question. for the exam, not for Monopoly, but for the exam, no description is required on your journal entries. Okay, that's just designed to save some time on the exam. In real life, you would always put a description, and because people want to know what happened, but for the exam, we just leave it off. Okay, so no descriptions required for JEs on the exam. Okay. All right. Thank you for asking that. Okay. All right. Okay, so you will get an income statement and a balance sheet on the exam, and you'll be asked to do a quick trend analysis. And I know you guys haven't done that before, so it's pretty straightforward. I have you guys do a very, very simple trend analysis. And in this question, I've highlighted revenue, and that's the same as sales, right? So Lululemon, we know is a very successful company. And around this time, they were growing really fast. You know, you can see their sales here were 711, a million, and 1,370,000. So really fast growth, okay? Real quick in the chat, without using your calculators, how much growth between January 2011 and 2012, just as fast as you can in your head, just an estimate, put in the chat. Percent, how much of a percentage growth in revenue from
40%.
2011 to 2012? 40%? Any other guesses? All right, so Hunter, was that you? Or Joe, how do you do that? How'd you calculate that? How would you calculate that? You didn't, you did it in your head, but how would you calculate that? Does anybody know?
Oh, I just use the revenue from the 2012 minus the base year and to divide the base year.
That's exactly right. So we're going to be doing this on the project as well. So let me
So
just bring up
basically, there is around 30,000. I guess is nearly less than half of the revenue from 2011.
Good. You're right. You're absolutely right. So here's the formula for percent change. Okay, right there. I'll put it in the chat. Can you see this? This year minus last year. That's what Joe is saying. Divided by last year. He called it the base year. So let's go do that with Lululemon. Okay. All right, so we're going to do 1,839,000 minus 711,704. And let's see if we can do that. Okay, so to do that formula, we're going to do 1,839,000 minus 711,704. And what do we get? What does that give us? So somebody throw that in the chat. What's the answer to that subtraction? That looks good. Anybody else?
289,135.
Oh, I got two of you say that. That's great. Okay. 135?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll take it. Okay, let me double check. No, I didn't go. Okay, clear. Okay, let's try it again. Let's see. One 100,839,711,704. Clear, 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 clear. All right, so that gives us this number. Then we take that number and you always divide by the previous year. Okay, and that gives you That gives you a decimal. Okay.
0.402625.
Okay, that's a pretty long number. So we're going to cut it off. And well, this should have a 0 point there. Okay, can you guys see that number? So we're going to multiply that number times 100. And you're going to get
40.62%.
62 or 63 because it had a 5 there, right? It was 5. That's how you do a percent change. So Joe was right. They between 11 and 12, it grew 40%. Okay. So I want to give you 1 minute. Can you do the change and put it in the chat? Direct message me. Don't copy it to everyone. Give me the percent change between 12 and 13. Okay. Oh, I like that. That's great. Caitlin, you're right. Michelle, you're right. Okay, anybody else? Selma, you're right. But Selma, put a percent sign on the right side of your number. Okay, yeah, you got it. Okay, Joe, you're right. Okay, awesome. Okay, so you guys know how to do this. So for the next year, we go and we say 1370358 minus 1000839 equals 369,519, and we divide that by the previous year, 100,839, and we get a decimal. And students always ask me, how do you do the rounding on the decimals? So we get 0.369209. So we're going to multiply that by 100, and we only keep 2 decimals at that point, but remember to round up. So 92, the next number is a 0, so you just hold that 2. Up here, the next number was a 5, so you round it to a 3, okay? So 5 and greater round up, otherwise ignore. So you've got your data, which is awesome. And the other piece of data we need, and it's really important, is the dollar change. Okay. All right. So from 2011 to 2012, the company grew 40.63%. From 2012.
You wrote 39.92, but it's 36.92.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, that's a better
No
number.
problem.
Thanks. Okay. So between the first 2 years, it grew 40.63%. Second year, it grew 36.92%. Now, I want to be really clear. Those are phenomenal growth rates. Phenomenal, off the charts. Okay. So you're going to write a couple of simple sentences for me. So the question on here is, let's go to the question. Discuss the trends. Include the following. 1. Thesis statement. What is the trend? Evidence, numeric and percents. We've just gotten the numeric and percent data. You kind of have to do the evidence first. Then it gives you your thesis statement and then your conclusion. Okay. So given our data, what would you say the trend is? You've got basically 3 choices, maybe 4. Okay. So I don't think we have the 4th choice, but your choice is the trend, and you want to give the whole sentence here. The trend for Lululemon from 2011 to 2013 revenue. Tell us what you're talking about. The revenue trend. Give us, I'm going to write this down. The revenue trend for Lululemon. When I first saw that company, I thought it was pronounced Lululemon, but my daughters corrected me quickly and ruthlessly. Okay, the revenue trend for Lululemon from 2011 to 2013 is what? Okay. If we were talking about net income, the net income trend for Lululemon from 2011 to 2013 is what? Favorable, unfavorable, or neutral? What do you guys think? Throw it in the chat. Favorable, unfavorable, or neutral? I agree. Okay. And you guys have said the trend is favorable. Oh, it doesn't get capitalized. Okay, so that's your thesis statement. You can write that thesis statement because you've already pulled the numbers. Okay. Your second sentence is just basically talking about the evidence. From 2011 to 2012, revenue grew. And here's where you put your data in and put a dollar sign here. 369, sorry, wrong data. 289, 135, or 40.63%. And you can make this two sentences or separate it with semicolon. From 2012 to 2013. Revenue grew. Now, here's the hard part. Revenue grew more the second year, 369,000 versus 289, but the growth rate was smaller. Okay. That's all you have to put in there for evidence. Okay. I want numbers. I want percent. Okay. Now your wrap-up sentence is your kind of summary sentence. And you can say a couple things. You can say, you can acknowledge to me that you know it didn't grow as fast. The growth rate slowed down the second year. First year growth rate was 40%, but second year growth rate was like almost 37%. Okay, so you can tell me you see that, okay? While the growth from 2012 to 2013 was slightly lower than the prior year, the growth rate is still very healthy, very strong. You know, use your own language, and then you're done. So really basic writing. I want you to be able to understand the trends and be able to communicate them. Okay. So I've already had students asking me, you know, this looks hard. Do we have to do essays? But my essays are pretty straightforward at this point in the quarter. As you get more into the project, that'll change. But I need you to understand how to do just the basic trend analysis here. Now, if the number was net income, it would be the same deal. You're just picking up the net income. You do not need to talk about the content in here, okay? Just the trend for the single line. Hunter, yeah. Go ahead.
So this is the essay. This is what the essay will look like.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It could be any number that I pick out. It doesn't have to be revenue. You should know that higher is better, but I think you'll get that. There will also be some information on the balance sheet as well. So, but it's the same basic concept. So, okay. All right, Tara, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just kind of wondering what like numeric value kind of showed what would be excuse me, what would be favorable. I think you mentioned that 36% was a great outcome. And I was wondering if it was like, you know, like 25% and higher is like a favorable outcome, or like what would define favorable?
Oh, so for growth rate, well, it's a little tricky because you're doing it in isolation. In real life, you'd be comparing to your competitors.
Mm-hmm.
You'd be looking at the economy, all of that. So I think it's safe to say that anything over about 3% is good news, because we're looking at older statements. You know, the economy's been growing like crazy until, you know, most recently where it's sort of crashed. And But I mean, we were seeing growth rates of 5 to 10% with companies. This growth rate for Lululemon is indicative of a company that really hit the market. It was sort of a unique concept, and it got rapid market share. And so because it had kept adding market share so fast, then you'd see these really crazy growth rates. But 40% is just wild. I mean, it's like, so I mean, anything over like 2 to 3% is probably good news. You know, you could argue that it's a lower growth rate, but you're not, I'm not asking you to compare. You'll do that for the project and say, wow, this company's growing at this rate, this one's not. So, but it's really hard for you guys to do it with just one company in a vacuum. And you know, half of you are women and probably know what Lululemon is, and the other half may or may not know what Lululemon is. I mean, guys in the room, do you know that company? See who's in the room. Joe, Hunter,
I've heard of it.
What company?
Dylan, do you know what this company sells? I mean, I'm assuming all the women in the room know what this company is.
Clothes.
Clothes?
Oh, you
Yeah.
talking about the Lululemon?
Yeah. Do you know what it is?
Oh,
Yeah, I have the
That's
pen.
all the sporting goods.
Sporting goods, yeah, yeah. So we've got clothes, we've got sporting goods. Dylan, what does Lululemon do?
Sorry, did you call on me?
I did. What does Lululemon sell?
Oh, like clothing or sometimes like water bottles or like athletic material.
Okay. All right. Women, what does Lululemon do?
They sell like all kinds of things that you need for like well, like you said, like athletic wear. And I think they also have like some like weird mirror thing that you can like work out with or something like that. Yeah.
Yep, you're absolutely right. And when you say athletic, are you focusing on any particular?
Like leggings, sweatshirts, like tops. They have a lot of like yoga materials. I think they like started focusing on like yoga in the beginning.
Yeah, yeah.
They
So,
could
I mean, so any other women want to make a comment on what they do?
They sell like headbands and jackets.
Mhm. I always think of them as the yoga store, but I think you're right. I think
Yeah.
they started out as yoga attire, yoga clothing, and then they've kind of branched out. They've been so popular, but so it's really hard. I mean, no matter what company I give you guys, some of you may know more about it than the others. So at this point, just focus on the numbers. So, and you guys should be fine. But you can't. It's really hard to say, is a 40% growth rate great? I mean, I know it is. It's huge. But I think what you're looking for, because you have 3 years of data here, you're looking for consistent growth rate. If you grew 40% here and then you went back to 600,000 and you plummeted, that would be an unfavorable trend. And we saw that a lot in 2020, where companies were on this growth pattern and then their sales dropped dramatically in 2020 just because of COVID, and also in 2021. So now things are slightly better. So it's a lot better now. Yeah, so does that help with the essay? So keep it simple. You do not need to do a lot of flowery speech. If you are a finance major, at some point you will write more beautiful essays, but for right now, I'm really interested in whether you can recognize the trend. Is it favorable, unfavorable, and neutral? Whether you can provide evidence to support your position. It's really important that you know what evidence we need to have for this. Okay. All right, any last minute questions? So I will have calculators tomorrow, simple calculators for you to use. Don't bring a programmable calculator. You can use one of mine, and the exam will be 100 minutes long, no breaks. So don't drink too much water beforehand. And any last minute questions for me in the chat?
Oh, what was the room for the test?
It is. Okay, let's go look at that. The room for the test is going to be room. Look, come on, come up.
What I see on the canvas is C165.
That's correct, yeah, so. And there's a campus map here. Can you see my Canvas page here, Joe?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a campus map, and if you come at 1, you may have to pay for parking. See, 165 is just right there.
Don't worry, I got the parking pass.
Okay, that's great. So if you come into campus, there's a water fountain, beautiful water fountain here, and then just turn right. If you're coming this way, turn right and go to the corner, go inside the building, and see 165 is right there. Okay. All right. And then I think if you come after 3, you don't have to pay for parking. Okay.
For the ones that are taking it online, are we allowed to have like scratch paper?
If you use scratch paper, you need to hold it up to the screen. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Oh, I think Hunter has a question.
Oh, Hunter, go ahead. Thank you.
I have 2 questions. One goes back to the favorable, unfavorable, neutral thing.
Sure.
Maybe I missed it, but I assume anything above 0 is favorable, 0 is neutral, and anything like a decrease in revenue would be unfavorable, or
Yeah, so
correct?
you've got 3 years of data. And so my question is, the trend for those 3 years is favorable, unfavorable, or neutral? Neutral would be just no growth.
Mhm.
Okay, so we're kind of, you could probably, if this were 2020 and the company had the same sales, you could argue that was probably favorable, right? Because that was such a horrible year for most companies. But in general, if you see the growth rate is going up, you have the first year, it's 40%. It went down here, but it's still so high that we're saying it's favorable. If you saw the sales just declining over the 3 years, so instead of a positive number here, if it were a negative number, if the sales were, 100, then they were 70, then they were 60, you'd have 2 years of drop sales. That would be an unfavorable trend. Okay. And we saw this all over the America during COVID. It just drop, because it was just too hard with the supply chain issues and a whole bunch of other issues, and employees getting sick, and factories having to shut down because they had a COVID outbreak and all of that. So anything that's, I think the question was, how low do you have to go to still be favorable? If you're growing at a steady 2% a year, that would be a neutral trend, but it would still be, it wouldn't be terrible news. It would be neutral. But so if you grew 2% one year and 3% the following year, that'd be a favorable trend. I mean, that's like a 50% growth rate, 2 to 3. So it should make sense to you that you want sales to go up and you want income to go up. So I think what's interesting here is, it's that because they're growing so fast, they grew more in absolute dollars the year 3, but because they were growing so fast as a percent, the growth rate slowed down. So just, tell me you see that when you're writing, So, but nobody was complaining about their growth rates during this time. So.
Yeah. One more question that's
Mhm.
unrelated. So we have 100 minutes for the test. Is that like the most students? Is that like, are they rushed, or is that like enough time for them to finish with time to spare? Or are they usually rushed?
They're not usually rushed. The average, I mean, and I hate this because there's always one student who turns in their exam like at 60 or 70 minutes, and then the whole class is like immediately stressed out. Just take your time. If you have time, double check your numbers. I am classic for making calculator errors. So I always go back, and if I have time, I check all my calculations because it's super easy to make a calculator. You just hit the wrong key or something. There will be students who are there and I have to call time, but usually most students finish in good time. All right. Any last?
Oh, Julius, I have a question.
Yeah, Joe, go ahead.
So when you're talking about the calculator, you said you have the calculator for us, right?
Correct.
Yeah, but this is what I I got a little Casio calculator. This is like really old one, but I
Okay.
use this one most. Can I use this one?
Just show it to me tomorrow, Joe. If it doesn't program, it's fine.
Oh, it is the most basic one, I
It's
think.
it's probably fine then. Yeah,
Okay,
it'd be good. Yeah.
yeah, okay, that's all.
Sound good. All right, you guys, study hard, and you have until midnight to do the practice homework, and then it'll be locked. So make sure you do it if you have time.
Professor
Thank
Paquette,
you so much.
All right, see you. Yeah, Hunter.
if you had one like last word of advice for us, what would it be?
Oh, pray, of course, but
I'm glad I didn't leave it.
last word of advice, eat eggs for breakfast. They help with your memory. Get some exercise maybe before you, don't be all tight and nervous. And then I think just really being comfortable with the material so that like tonight or after this class, after right now, if you just pick up your chapter 2, chapter 3 book or go online and see it, and you just read the problems and just be comfortable that, yeah, I know how to do that. So if you have that sense that you recognize the problem and you know how to do it, you recognize the journal entry. I mean, you only have 13 journal entries, so you could just memorize them, and then it's just how the data is presented. So I always tell students, don't understudy, but don't go crazy either. But start making flashcards for the journal entries. They really do help students. They always tell me that. So, all right, that's more than one last piece. But anyway, I will see you guys tomorrow in C165. Take care. Get a good night's sleep.
Thank
See you
you.
tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you later.
Thank you, Professor.
You are welcome. See you later.